and a lot of my teammates in college, especially, who were like, number one in this or number one in that, they quit too early because they were like embarrassed that they lost some tournament or frustrated that they weren't getting the results that they were once getting as juniors. And I was like, you're quitting too early. You just got to like lock in and analyze and stay focused. So it's a mental piece that separates the good from the great.
Folks, welcome to the Playbook with Coach Rod. If this is your first time visiting our podcast, just wanted to give you a little context of why I started the Playbook. The Playbook was an opportunity for me to extend my network, my access, my immediate community to my extended community at large, with the hopes of having conversations with trailblazers, pioneers, captains of industries, or just thought leaders in their respective spaces, to just gain some lessons, to gain some pathways, to gain inspiration, motivation, or even learn a little bit about their journey that applies to ours, so that we, as a community and even as an extended community, can have some sense of a light post, right, to help guide us. Today, I'm especially happy to have this conversation with my good friend, Keeth Smart. Just a little bit about Keith before we get into the conversation. Keith is a 3-time Olympian. In 2008, he won the Olympic Silver Medal in fencing, saber fencing. In 2003, for the first time in American history, a male became the number 1 ranked fencer, saber fencer in the world, right? And Keith is from Brooklyn, right? So this is even more like how. From there, Keith has translated this from what he's learned from fencing, from what he's learned from his childhood, to being a senior leadership in business, and now a senior executive using the same principles. So with that being said, join me in welcoming Keeth Smart to the Playbook. Welcome, Keith.
Thank you, Rod. I'm honored. I'm really excited for our conversation.
Listen, the first thing I have to ask you, right, because we grew up in Brooklyn, right, and in Flatbush. This is Caribbean country, right? How? I know you get access a lot. How do you find fencing in a place where everything is basketball?
Yep. Yeah, it's a great question. I grew up in Flatbush and played basketball a lot, but my dad, he worked for Sports Illustrated, and he saw an article that said fencing is a great sport to help kids get a college scholarship. And my parents didn't have a lot of money, so they were always focused on education and how to pay for college. So he saw that article, and then he was like thinking about it for a little bit. And then a few weeks later, he saw another article about a Black Olympic fencer called Peter Westbrook, who was starting a program in New York City specifically for Black and brown kids to have free fencing lessons. And he was like, oh, this is a perfect match. And so he registered me and my sister Erin, who is also a 3-time Olympian, and we became some of the first students in the program. We would travel from Flatbush to the Upper West Side, which was an hour and 10 minutes on the train. But we knew it was a great opportunity for the free lessons, and my parents just really forced us to do this starting at 10 years old.
So you said two things, and at some point we're probably going to get into the conversation of access versus opportunity, right? Because I had the same story around with my son, who I got into lacrosse, and the journey it took to us to get him to places where he can have exposure. So access versus exposure, not opportunity. But you said at 10 years old, you knew this was a good opportunity, or did you just listen to your parents and, hey, I got to go to fencing?
Yeah, I wanted to. I didn't know it was going to be a great opportunity. I was into the Olympics because of Carl Lewis and Florence Griffiths Joyner and Edwin Moses. So I'd always watch the Olympics from '84 and '88. But I was really more when my parents basically were like, you're not going to make it to the NBA, so this is a better this is a better chance. And my dad had grown up in Brooklyn, so he knew basketball enough where he was like,
Yeah.
you're not good enough to make it to the NBA. So let's focus on this. And it was actually more of a leap of faith for my sister, who was actually a really good track athlete. She was already
Oh.
8 years old, running at Madison Square Garden, getting recruited to join all these track teams around New
Oh
York
wow.
City.
Yeah.
But they knew that that fencing had just had a better odds of success at the time.
Yeah, and it's funny because that just drawing from that as a parent, you know, me as a parent, you as a parent, sometimes we just have to put our kids in situations with a plan for them. But at what moment did fencing take over for you, where you're just like, okay, this is an opportunity, but I actually enjoy this?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I was kind of doing it like very passively
Hmm.
all through middle school or junior high. It wasn't until I got to high school and we went to Brooklyn Tech, and just meeting kids from all over the city, I was like, okay, really smart kids. I was like, I gotta really focus on my talent, which was fencing, um, and really just dive deep into this. I and I really just became obsessed, basically in high school, of
Oh,
like fencing and practicing all the time.
so because again, we're different, right? So you're telling me once you got to high school, you already had in your mind that okay, there's a pathway for me to get to college, and you're already self-reflecting. And how did you develop that lens? Because in high school, I didn't think about college till I graduated college. Right? It wasn't this is a true story.
Yeah,
I graduated college and I did really well in college and I played college football. It wasn't until I graduated that I said, what did I just do with the past 4 years? And when I went
yeah,
for my master's degrees, because my dual MBAs, is when I'm in the front of the class. I was very
yes.
intentional. Like, how did you have that mindset going in as a high school student?
Yeah, well, I it was more of like uh, college was a path to go to the Olympics for me. I was
Oh,
laser
wow.
focused on trying to make it to the Olympics by about like 15 years old. Um, I was really like just training with a lot of top athletes, top coaches, and the coaches were really like, you guys can be really good, but you got to commit 5, 6 days a week to training and competing. And it also, what that told me was, in order to go to the Olympics, you have to go to a good college, which will also support your fencing training and your Olympic training.
Oh, wow.
So there was a full connection there, and then also I was really blessed where I would go to training camps in high school at Columbia University and at NYU.
Mm.
So I was like stepping on these college campuses for training camps, and I was like, oh wow, like I was just immersed in this whole
Okay.
culture.
So, obviously, then there's some point where your parents weren't forcing you to go. It was okay. This is what I want. This is what I want to do. This is what I'm going to commit myself to. I had a question I want to ask you. Right, I've been meaning to ask you for a while because you're in high school and this is the teenage years,
Yeah,
and basketball's at the forefront,
yeah,
football's at the forefront. We went to a school where I played on the football team. The track and field
track.
athletes got their
Yeah,
attention. How how did you tune that out, right? Because there's the
yeah,
sense to want to assimilate, to be popular, to want to
yeah.
have people accept, and you're on this path. And saber fencing, even though they have team sports and team scoring,
Yeah.
it's a small world. How did you tune out the noise?
Yeah, that was probably the hardest part for me in high school, where every like the most popular kids I think were in basketball, football, or track. And but I think what helped me was I made a lot of friends at Tech around this, because I was training in fencing. people were really interested that I was traveling all over the country. And then I started traveling all over the world. So I would miss class like on a Friday or a Monday
Yeah.
because I was in California for a competition. And people were like, "Where were you?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I was in Arizona, or I was in wherever,
Wherever, right?
Kansas." And then and I also had this group of black fencing kids that I had started with, where we were all going to different high schools, and we built a bond together of like, you know what,
Mhm.
we're just gonna focus on our thing. Don't get distracted. We're like laser focused on trying to get to the Olympics. And I would say that probably I'll never forget this. My senior year of high school, an article came out in Sports Illustrated, and I was in it, about like
I remember that one.
being
Yeah.
up and coming Olympian, because this was '96 Olympics, and and it was about like people to think about for the 2000 Olympics, and at that point people started like, oh yeah, now I get what you were doing, Keith, with all these competitions.
So you told me from, I think you said the 19, because I said me 4 years, right? So yeah, 2008, 2004, 2000, 2096, 92. You said since the 88 Olympics you've been, hooked, right?
Hmm.
And you had a clear dream of, I want to go to the Olympics and I'm going to go as a fencer. That's my pathway, right? And at what moment, now let's transition, right? Because I'm getting a sense for, I knew very young and I wanted to chase my dream. On that path to trying to chase your dream, what were, besides trying to, find your community in high school, what were your biggest obstacles? You know,
Yeah,
Mhm.
I there was like probably two or three. As like the biggest one was money. My family, my mom's from Jamaica, and my dad, like they were like, just working class, middle class type
Mhm.
family, and fencing, or just any sport where you're traveling a lot requires a lot of money. And my
Mm.
mom, as a public school teacher, like really we stretched every dollar. And so I especially growing up in high school, I didn't have like Jordans. I didn't have like we had to make trade-offs, like guest
Yeah.
teams or whatever. I couldn't buy that stuff if I wanted to go to a competition and have some money to eat at a competition. So that was the one. The other one I would say that challenge was actually at Brooklyn Tech, the workload.
Mm.
The amount of schoolwork was so much. Years later, I appreciated it because it really pushed my muscle of like time management and balance. But my friends that was fencing,
Mhm.
they went to schools which were not as academically rigorous. So they could stay at practice maybe 30 minutes longer, or not worry about like some
Yeah.
report they had to write the next
Yeah.
day. And I was just like really struggling to keep up with the workload at Tech, and not having access to tutors and all these other resources made it very humbling, because I wasn't really still good at fencing, and then I wasn't really good at school either. So I was
Mm.
like, I'm struggling on both sides. And the teachers and the principal at the time, I would talk to him, Dr. McCaskill. I was like, I need help. And he was like, well, you just gotta figure it out. You gotta like grind it out.
Wow.
And I was just like, all right. So it taught me like how to like
Mhm.
figure it out. And what it also taught me, finding a tribe in high school, I ended up, instead of going to the cafeteria at lunchtime, I started going to the library, because I realized that I couldn't keep up with the workload, because I would have practice after school, which was an hour away on the Upper West Side. So I was like,
Mm.
man, I gotta like start getting ahead of the homework and doing that at the library at lunch.
Wow. And I know we're just talking about high school, but you already see some of the foundational principles, right? You use the word trade-off. Right? There's a trade-off here, right? As we say in finance, zero sum, right?
Hmm.
We just can't increase. It's like something has to give, and I have to be okay with that. And I just did it. I just did a whole series on balance, work-life balance. And I
Yeah.
was speaking with Loyson Gordon, the owner of Nearest Tavern, the oldest tavern in U.S. history, and he said, "Listen, it's a seesaw, right? That's all it is. It's seasons, right? There's gonna be highs and lows, but there is no balance per se. So now I'm hearing the trade-off, the commitment, time management. There's a level of
Yeah.
vulnerability. Don't be afraid to ask for help, and then
Hmm.
you have to own this process. So it seems like to me in high school, you just started owning the process, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think the trade-off for me personally was on the social side as well in high school. Like I didn't go to the prom, I didn't do any of those like typical high school things because I was practicing or I was at a competition. And so I would always just say, all right, I'm just gonna like lock in, and those trade-offs kept on growing in terms of work-life
Mm,
balance as I went through college and even as a professional fencer in my 20s. It's like sometimes I'm not going to go to your wedding. I'm not going to go to your,
yeah.
whatever, your family function, some family reunion, because I can't miss practice or I can't miss a competition. And
Oh man, so part of this is, and this is therapeutic for me because I'm hearing my son talk to me. Because again, I was a Division 1 athlete,
yeah,
and contrasting us, I realize even more now why I would have never made it, right? Because I just wasn't as committed. It was really how do you deal with. To me, it seems like it was less about my physical abilities because I can harness those, and it's just about my
yeah.
mental and how do I keep myself, focused. Right. And I was all over the place, right? So it is what
Yeah.
it is. It is
Well,
what it
well,
is.
but you raise a good point, and that's the kind of the difference I would say for a lot of Olympians and those aspiring to be Olympians. Like at a certain level, especially in college, like my teammates, we are all like physically talented. Like I wasn't the strongest or the fastest,
Hmm.
but the
Hmm.
difference is the mental commitment and the resiliency to bouncing back after setbacks. And a
Yeah.
lot of Olympian, all Olympians will tell you this. You lose way more than you win. So how do you bounce back, come back, learn from that loss, and get back in practice and analyze what you could have done better? And a lot of my teammates in college, especially, who were like, number one in this or number one in that, they quit too early because they were like embarrassed that they lost some tournament or frustrated that they weren't getting the results that they were once getting as juniors. And I was like, you're quitting too early. You just got to like lock in and analyze and stay focused. So it's a mental piece that separates the good from the great.
So you know what? You're taking me a little further to the conversation, but let's just go there. Um, because as I read, 3-time Olympian, right? Silver medalist, and I think you also won a bronze medal at one of the Olympics as well, right?
Oh, I was fourth. I missed it by 1 point.
Right. So I'm gonna frame it in this way for the listeners, but not as an
Hmm.
indictment. 3-time Olympian, twice you failed.
Yep.
You didn't hit your mark. Now, for context, folks, to be an Olympian is a success. There is no such thing as a failure. Once you get
Yes.
there, you're better than the rest. However, as individuals, we didn't hit our mark,
Totally.
right? You won in 2008, but you were number one in the world in 2003. So that tells me at least a 5-year span where it's like I was the best and I'm not winning
Yes.
at the highest level, and this has been my dream. So let's talk about take me behind the curtain and mentally, and how are you saying, okay, I didn't get it this time, I'm going back again.
Yeah.
I gotta wait
Yeah.
another 4 years. I'm no longer number one in the world. Will I reach my dream? Walk me through that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, I would love to. It's a great question. Yeah, no, 2003, number one in the world. Have endorsements and commercials and really doing well. Especially
Yeah.
in Europe, fencing is like the equivalent of like baseball in America. Like I was pretty famous in Europe, and
Mhm.
I thought that I was going to win a medal at the 2004 Olympics, and I missed it twice by 1 point. to get into the gold medal match and to get into the
Yeah.
bronze and then to win a bronze medal. And at that point in time, I thought that was the worst experience of my life. On the world stage, I've been working for 20 years to get to this point, and then my job, I just had to get one more point, which I normally would get in my sleep. I couldn't do it, and I choked because I felt the pressure of like trying to get that last point. And what it taught me was that I had to humble myself, and I took a lot of time off, especially for an Olympian. I took like 9 months off just to like recalibrate. And then when I came back, I was like, all right, I need to ask all of my coaches and teammates, what did I do wrong? And really work on my weaknesses versus thinking that my strengths will overpower someone else's best move. And so I made my weaknesses much stronger and made my variety more unpredictable. But mentally, it was also just saying, all right, now I got to wait another 4 years. And I'm only in between 2004 and 2008. My only goal was not to be ranked number one again, was to win a medal. And that's all we talked about. It was like, our mission is to win a medal. And the only reason I'm going to come back is if I know I can win a medal. And it was a lot of, soul searching as well as a lot of reflection. I still haven't watched the matches from 2004, but I've analyzed them through others who've watched them and telling me like, this is where you messed up. But ultimately, it was a focus on, I gotta like really acknowledge my weaknesses. And in the 2008 games, asking my teammates and coaches, all right, what do I do in this situation? Instead of thinking I have all the answers, what should I be doing in this situation? And that really is what pulled me through.
Wow. There's so many lessons I'm drawing from that. One, thank you for acknowledging that it is a mental battle with yourself. It is, if you're chasing the dream, because for you, it's success is not guaranteed.
Right.
Because it's someone else's dream as well.
Exactly.
When do I call it quit? I'm seeing people around me quit, which, when you see other people around you quit, that introduces the idea that maybe quitting is okay.
Yes.
Right. And I'm becoming lonelier and lonelier. And to some extent, I don't want to put words in your mouth.
100%.
And now I did need to step away. But the part that I'm hearing is I now realize it takes this village, this community. And I got to lean on other people to help me get better. Right? Beyond just my coaching, I have to open myself up and welcome this level of feedback and be okay with it and say, no, this is what I need in the pursuit of my dream. And now you have this 8-year gap and you go back. And now I'm getting ahead of myself. You mentioned the pressure. I don't think people talk about that enough, right? Because as spectators, we can use the word choke. They crumble under the pressure. Talk about what does pressure look like? What does it feel like at that stage for yourself as an elite athlete? Because we don't really talk about like, how does it manifest itself?
It's another great question. The Olympics, I'll answer it in two parts. So the Olympic Village, the week before the opening ceremonies and the first week of the games is like being on a college campus where everybody's studying for finals. And it's just everybody's cramming. No one's really like chit-chatting. Nobody's like, everybody's just laser focused of like, all right, I don't want to like mess up with whatever I've been doing for the past 4 years. And then the added layer to that is, as a U.S. Olympian, we Americans say, and they're very explicit about it, like, we're investing in you, so we expect you to get medals. We're not coming here for some participation. So we expect medals, and they drill it into us all the time. Of like, we're giving you everything you want, and in fact, the U.S. Olympic Committee builds a separate Olympic village just for the American athletes to train at,
Oh
where
wow.
no one really knows about this. So we could get our own Olympic village with our own American TV, American weight, so we don't have to calculate kilograms to pounds,
Mm-hmm.
American food, and it's drilled into you. So you feel this underlying pressure of, we have to win medals, we have to win the medal count, and so there's a lot of sports psychologists on campus as well, because people are breaking down from
Oh wow.
the stress of it. But you're you what the a lot of it has to do with like making sure you don't make it feel like it's any different than another competition that one might have done before. Where the pressure gets to people, whether it's Simone Biles or Greg Louganis or whomever, it's when they start thinking about it more as an Olympic competition versus a regular competition. And I made
Mm.
that same mistake as well, where I was like, oh my God, this is an Olympic competition and I'm about to win a medal. And then you start thinking about all of the cameras, the lights, the fans, like
Oh
thousands
wow.
of fans. And
That's a real thing?
oh yeah, oh yeah, it's a legitimate thing. And so people tighten up. And even like recently with the Winter Olympics, the figure skater, he finished fourth, Ilion, because he couldn't do his normal moves, which he could probably do in practice 1,000 times. But overthinking it would just like stop. So the part of the essence is like mental training, visualization, and
Mm.
understanding that your breathing and understanding your heart rate, your breath rate, as well as like recognizing that this is the
Mm-hmm.
same type of competition as that you've always done.
That's fascinating because again, this is my first time being able to ask, someone at this level, right? Because when we say Olympian, you're there with, if you're there in 2008, you are there with Carmelo Anthony,
Oh yeah, yeah,
right? And the best of
yeah.
the best. And to say that, and it's funny because now that I reference basketball, I think that's one of the years where our basketball team didn't do well,
Yeah.
in the
Well,
nationals.
the 2004 Olympics, and I wasn't surprised that they didn't do well. Uh, I saw them and I was like, oh, you guys aren't taking it serious.
Gotcha. Yeah, gotcha. So, you took us behind what pressure looks like. It's just a question I want to ask. It's because I want to be clear when I say this. You mentioned two things, and I want to draw the difference. You said, I'm no longer focused on number one in the world. Our sole focus is medaling. So, was there a point in your life where you were saying, I want to be the best in the world at this, and you went after it?
There was, yeah. That was it was actually after my first Olympics. When what I realized in 2000, um, with, as you mentioned, like it's great to be an Olympian. You're like, there's only 600 U.S. Olympians out of a country of 300 million. So it's an honor. But what I also
Yeah.
realized is that the U.S. Olympic Committee treats medal contenders or medal uh, op champions a lot differently than participating Olympians. And so I was like, oh, like, not to say they're treating me bad, but it was like they're
Yeah.
not like focused on me. And so, um, but after I got home, I was like, okay, I really need to. I saw how they treated the Olympians that were really there to try and win medals. And I was like, I thought I was training really well going into the 2000 Olympics. And when I was around those Olympians, I was like, oh, I'm not training nearly like those guys are. And I had to
Mm.
acknowledge that I needed to step up my training even more than I thought I had done. And so that's why I really wanted to be number one in the world, because it it gave me a little bit more credibility and resources, and essentially I became a professional athlete because of that, and I was able to just command a lot more sponsorships and things of that
Okay.
nature.
So that's extremely helpful, because again, I take everything into business, into life,
Yeah,
right? Sports to me is the microcosm of society, right?
totally.
And there's stages to this. You're in competition with yourself, right? And that's the first competition. Like, I got to beat myself, but let's not kid ourselves. You are also in competition with a community that you don't even recognize. Because I drew that from when you said, when I got here to the best of the best, it's like, wait a minute, I'm not good enough, or I'm not doing enough if I want to be better than the ones that are even here.
Correct.
So yeah, your accomplishments are established, but let's take it again a little bit further. What did it feel like to be in a sport where traditionally there was a representation?
Oh, yeah.
Right? And what was that mindset? And to frame it, when my son was doing lacrosse, it wasn't a lot of people that looked like him.
Yeah.
And it's funny, I wasn't the one playing, but as a parent, there weren't a lot of parents that looked like me. And I was like,
Right.
I'm not comfortable here. I don't know what to say. I don't know. Eventually you get over that. But this is competition now. So
Yeah.
what was that like?
It was, I, that's a fascinating. I think I struggled with it for a long time, to be
Mm.
transparent. Um, the first time I really realized, when I started fencing, leaving Flatbush, Brooklyn, it's all Caribbean. So it was just a matter of like what island your family was from
Yeah.
versus like, so I had grown up in a bubble of like just being around Caribbean people all the time. And then I started going to the Upper West Side, and I was like, oh, wow, there's like real wealth in New York. And then in high school, actually, I started going, like, this is like 13, 14. There's a club in New York called the New York Athletic Club, and it's on Central Park South and 7th Avenue. And this club, for years, up until like the mid to the late 90s, didn't allow women or people of color. And I remember, I didn't even know this existed in New York, and I was like just
Yeah.
walking into the building, and they're like, "Oh, no, 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 you got to use the back door." And I was like, "Oh, man!"
Wow. This is mid
And
90s.
this is the 90s. This is like 91, 92, and
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh, wow!" And so then I started to like process, like, "Oh, okay, this is I'm really a true minority in this sport,
Mm.
and dealing with like the cheating and the injustices of like not having like parents to go to competitions and support me. So like, my parents couldn't afford to go with us to competition, so we just like all like 5 Black kids be in like Tennessee
Mm.
by ourselves, and like being told like, no, you guys can't eat here or whatever. But I think the hardest part, honestly, was when I started going to Europe. And I'll never forget this. I must have been like 14 or 15, and I went to Hungary for a training camp, and they hadn't seen Black people before. And they were just like
Oh,
coming up to me and my sister and one other person, and like trying to touch our hair. And I was like, what are you doing? And
yeah.
so basically, I learned how to like lean on like the other kids. I spent a lot of time with the other small group of Black kids that was also fencing, and we came like a really tight knit group. And then also learning in the sport itself that we're gonna have to not only be good, but we have to be better than good, because they're gonna cheat,
Oh,
because they don't
wow.
want to see. Yeah, so like a match usually goes to 15, first one to 15, and we
Yeah.
would train to get 20 points, because you knew you were going to lose a few points, because maybe the referee doesn't want to see a Black person succeed or something like that. So
Yeah.
what it taught me was a lot of resilience. It also taught me that there's still racism in the world, but you just have to learn how to deal with it in different aspects, especially like when I was going to Eastern Europe. Like that was like they're not used to seeing black people anywhere in Eastern Europe.
Wow. And so how has your participation, how has your accolades, how has you winning? Because again, in the US, we celebrate winners. How has that allowed you to change, if at all, the representation in the sport and the acceptance of, because I know St. John's has a few fencers right now that are doing their thing, right? How do you see your legacy now in this?
Yeah, no, I'm honored what I've been able to accomplish in the sport, because I know specifically and literally many other Black Olympians in fencing specifically have come into the sport because they saw an article about me or my sister and they wanted to join, and now like there's a lot more Black parents at the sport, in the sport, or Black families in the sport. And it's a lot because they're like, yeah, I saw you on 60 Minutes, or yeah, I saw you on like, Oprah Winfrey. And this is like, it tells us that we're not alone. Even at the most recent Paris Olympic Games, I took my family there, and this Black woman, Lauren Scruggs, she won a gold medal in fencing. And I was talking to her mom, and she was like, Keith, do you realize I literally put Lauren in fencing because of you and your sister Erin, because I'm from Jamaica as well. I was like, I didn't even know that. And she was like, yeah, like your story inspired me as a single mom from Jamaica to put my kids in fencing from New York, and I just wanted them to follow your path, and that's all we talked about. So there's a lot of people like that. Yeah.
That is oh man, that is amazing. And I know you've done some work with the Olympic Committee as well in terms of having a voice there. And as we start to wind down, how have these lessons, the preparation, the commit? Actually, no. Before I forget, and I hate to do a bad interview, I cut myself short. Was there ever a moment that you thought about quitting?
Well, a couple of times. Probably the closest I came was when I was um, after the 2004 Olympics, when I finished fourth. That was really the closest. I was like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe this happened. It was actually like the first time in fencing Olympic history that somebody loses a medal twice by 1 point. So I was just like shocked that it happened to me. And then it happened on such a world stage, like where like when I got back to New York, there was all these articles about how I choked and this and that. Man. So I was like, man, this is tough. And it wasn't, what pulled me out of that was honestly, my dad died, and I needed that to like shake up my constitution. I was like, I didn't expect him to die of a heart attack so young. And I was like, you know what? I got to get back into this, and I can't go out like this. And so that's really what got me back into it.
Okay. How has everything you've learned translated the skills, the mental aspects of the game, the physical aspects, right? Because there's a great deal of physical preparation. How has that prepared you for now fatherhood and even leadership in corporate leadership? How is that translated? What some principles that you could speak to?
Yeah, so physically, I think it's taught me a lot to be disciplined. I still retain like pretty much the same diet I've always had, high protein, greens, and things of that nature. But it also like I've embedded it into my culture of like just always working out and always like being an active dad. So like I can run around the playground and I like taking my kids on bike rides and stuff like that, where they see the importance of like just staying active. Mentally and leadership wise, I think what I've learned with fencing is no two opponents are the same, and every bout is different. It's very similar to like boxing or tennis. So you're always like calculating all these moves in your head. And that's how life is. Like when you're like leading a team, like right now I have about 800 employees reporting into me. So everybody has a different story. Everybody has different goals. So I'm adjusting my communication as well as my style based on whom I'm talking to and how they interpret information. So I can't treat everyone the same. And that's similar to like how I grew up with fencing, where if I try and do the same move against you, Rod, versus John Doe next door, I'm gonna lose. So I gotta like be willing to be adaptive and also be willing to analyze and reflect on what worked and what didn't.
Yeah. Before we started recording, you and I had a quick back and forth, and something you said that just shocked me. Right? I know as an athlete you have coaches, but as Olympians actually there's a structure for mentorship. And talk to me about that, because I think growing up you heard about children need mentors, but I didn't really understand it, right? And I mentor now, and you're understanding you need people that have done it to kind of partake life lessons beyond just the technical coaching. What does that mentorship look like? Because I believe you're also considered a mentor.
I am, yeah. And so we have in the Olympics we have formal mentorship and we have informal. So like formal mentorship will be things of like we'll have like former Olympians like myself where we'll speak to aspiring Olympians or current Olympians of like here's what to expect at the games. Here's how you handle the media. Here is how you handle your family, where they're asking for a ton of tickets, and how to say, like, give me my space. And then informal mentorship is actually the stuff I like the most, where I'm constantly like reaching out to I'm letting them know they can reach out to me at any point. Just text me. Hey, there's a lot of talk about like Olympic depression, like after the games. How do I adjust my life and figure out what to do next? So I'm reaching out to them like, hey, what's going on? How are you feeling? How are you holding up? You want to grab coffee? I saw your last competition. You did really well. Like just letting them know that that I'm thinking of them and top of mind goes a long way. And then also they'll reach out and say, hey, I got to figure out, like, I'm feeling a lot of pressure right now. I got to win this competition. How did you deal with this situation? Or, can we watch some competitions together just so I can understand how you analyze the game versus how I analyze the game? So,
yeah.
And then it's just the last piece is like, I'm also like just opening myself up as a resource. I truly believe in giving back, and the more you give, the more you get. And so if I just want to be available for them in any capacity.
So again, just so you can hear what I heard from my mouth. What I heard was this: you have to check in on the person, right? Yes. That's part of the mentorship, because in our community, vulnerability, emotion, even allowing yourself to believe there's emotions is frowned upon. But what I'm hearing from someone who's been number one in the world, who's medaled, and the world has to acknowledge forever that at this stage he was at least number 2 in the world on the biggest stage. He's a winner. You are a winner.
Yeah.
That even at this stage, you have to be aware that there's a lot of emotions, and you have to figure out how to address that, manage that, talk it out. I had one person tell me, whatever you don't talk out, you act out. So it'll show itself up one way and another. So I didn't even expect you to even go there. I want to keep this going on forever, and I know you're willing to. But again, what I've learned is when people listen to podcasts, if they see an hour, they're not going to listen to the whole thing. So I'm going to truncate this. So again, we're going to go rapid fire. I did have a few rapid fire questions for you. What habits create consistency?
Oh yeah, I think vision, mental, like I've visualized, and also positive communication. So saying like I'm gonna have a great practice today. I'm visualizing myself winning, and then I'm
Mm.
visualizing myself like working hard, and that once you start visualizing it, it builds that mental muscle, and then you don't worry about like not showing up for something.
All right, that's awesome. What does preparation look like in everyday life, right? Because now you're an executive, so you have to carry
Yeah.
like what does preparation look like? These are just my rapid fire questions to
Yeah,
you.
that's a preparation for me in everyday life is more of like making sure I have to move my body. I gotta be active, because if I'm not actively like doing some sort of form of exercise, I feel like I'm like cheating myself. And then I also always want to like carve out time for family time, which is something I've been really passionate about. I learned this from reading Obama's biography, where he made a point to always have family dinner no matter what. And I focused on that a lot,
Mm.
because I think being present for my children is like just as important as any fire that's going on at work. So they know like they take precedence versus issues at work.
All right. And probably my last rapid fire question: how do you define confidence?
Ooh. I think I define confidence by presence, of like feeling like you're willing to be vulnerable, you're willing to ask questions, you're willing to just say I don't know. Like that's confident
Mm.
to me, where it's like, I don't know, let me get back to you. I don't I'm not sure is a way. And also being willing to say like I'm scared. Like those are like the really confident people, where they're
Oh.
able to share their emotions, especially at the Olympics, of like, you know what, I'm really nervous, I'm really scared. And then we can bring in resources to help you manage that.
Okay. And my very last question: what would you tell a young person who doesn't see themselves represented in the spaces they aspire to be?
I would say, don't let anyone challenge your visions.
Mhm.
You can be a trailblazer, and there's always someone willing to help you. So like if you're feeling alone or scared going like
Mhm.
setting this new path, don't let somebody like uh knock you down. Like just lean on other people in your community to like help push you forward, but don't give up. That's the thing. Don't ever give up.
All right. Keith, thank you so much, man. I enjoyed this conversation. I literally could have had it for 2 hours because again, not every day do you get to hear what's actually happening in these 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 trailblazers. Like I said, you're the first ever American to be ranked number one in the world, and because you're black, you're the first black person ever to be ranked number one in the world. But we'll have you back again. I know you're in leadership at Chelsea Fitness, so I'll bring you back to just talk about how parents can use your space to,
Yes.
reestablish their family. Keith, thanks again. Appreciate you. Love you, brother. And me growing up with you, we're always so proud of you.
Oh, thank you. Love you, man. Really proud of you as well.
Folks, this is the Playbook with Coach Rod.
Let's go.